The alarm clock screamed at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before it was supposed to. Emily Parker's hand shot out from under the thin comforter, slapping the snooze button with the practiced precision of someone who'd done this exact motion 1,000 times before. The small bedroom of her Brooklyn studio apartment was still dark, the winter sun not yet brave enough to challenge the New York night. She lay there for exactly 30 seconds, her daily luxury, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that vaguely resembled the state of Florida. The radiator clanked and hissed in the corner, providing just enough heat to keep the room tolerable, but not quite comfortable. Outside, she could hear the familiar symphony of the city waking up, delivery trucks rumbling down the street, the distant wail of sirens, someone's car alarm that had been going off intermittently for 3 days now. Emily sat up, her breath visible in the cold air. 25 years old, and this was her life. Not the life she'd imagined at 18 when she'd moved to New York with dreams bigger than her budget. But it was hers. Honest. Hard-earned. Simple. She padded across the cold floor to the tiny bathroom, avoiding the loose floorboard that squeaked loud enough to wake Mrs. Chen next door. The face that looked back at her from the mirror above the sink was tired. Dark circles under green eyes that used to be brighter, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days. But she was still standing, still fighting. That had to count for something. The shower was lukewarm at best. The building's hot water was temperamental, and sharing one water heater among 12 apartments meant you either showered early or showered cold. Emily had learned to make peace with it. 5 minutes later, she was dressed in black pants and a white button-down shirt, her uniform for the restaurant. She'd iron it properly when she got there. Over it, she threw on her warmest coat, a thrift store find that was missing one button, but kept out most of the February wind. The subway ride from her neighborhood in Brooklyn to Manhattan was 45 minutes of standing room only, pressed between a man who smelled like he'd bathed in cologne and a woman whose shopping bags kept hitting Emily's legs. She used the time to mentally prepare for the day ahead, scrolling through her phone to check her bank account. The number that appeared made her stomach tighten. $847.23. Rent was due in 8 days. She closed the app and opened her notes instead, where she kept a running list of her goals. Save $15,000 for tuition. Current, $4,200, get back to school. Fall semester, find a better apartment. Quiet, working heat. Take mom to see a real Broadway show. The list was ambitious. Maybe too ambitious. But Emily had learned that if you didn't write down your dreams, they had a way of disappearing entirely. Marchetti's was the kind of restaurant that appeared in movies about New York. All exposed brick, Edison bulbs, and a wine list that cost more than Emily made in a month. It occupied the ground floor of a historic building in Tribeca, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto a cobblestone street. During the day, it was elegant. At night, it transformed into something magical, the kind of place where proposals happened and business deals were sealed over $30 pasta dishes. Emily had been working there for 2 years, ever since she'd dropped out of NYU after her freshman year when her father got sick, and the medical bills started piling up. The pay was decent, the tips were sometimes excellent, and the owner, Marco Marchetti, was fair if you worked hard. It wasn't her dream job, but it kept her afloat. "Emily, you're early, thank God." Sarah, the shift manager, rushed past carrying 3 bottles of wine. She was a whirlwind of energy. 32 years old, married to a teacher, and perpetually stressed but somehow always smiling. "We're short tonight," Sarah continued, not breaking stride. "David called in sick, and Monica's got that family thing. It's going to be just you, Tom, and Jasmine on the floor, and we've got a full house, every table, including the private section." Emily's heart sank. Being understaffed at Marchetti's on a Friday night was like being asked to swim across a river during a storm. Possible, but you'd arrive on the other side exhausted and probably a little traumatized. "The private section?" Emily repeated, hanging up her coat in the small staff room. The private section was a separated area at the back of the restaurant, reserved for VIP guests who valued discretion. Celebrities sometimes, business executives, people who didn't want to be photographed eating their risotto. Table 12. Reserved for 8 p.m., Mr. Castellano's party. Sarah checked her watch. "That gives us 3 hours to handle everyone else. You good?" Emily nodded, already tying her apron. "I'm good." She wasn't good. By 7:30, she was drowning. The restaurant was chaos incarnated into the form of fine dining. Every table was full, and somehow they all seemed to need something at the exact same moment. Table 4 wanted their steaks redone because they were too medium for medium rare. Table 7's anniversary couple requested a specific wine that wasn't on the menu. Table 9 had a toddler who'd decided that throwing breadsticks was the evening's entertainment. Emily moved through it all with the practiced grace of someone who'd learned to carry 3 plates in each hand and smile through the exhaustion. Her feet ached in her non-slip shoes. A strand of hair had escaped her ponytail and was sticking to her forehead. She could feel a stress headache building behind her eyes. "Emily, table 6 needs water," Tom called out as he rushed past with a tray of appetizers. "On it. Table 3 wants to talk to someone about the gluten-free options." "I'll be right there." The kitchen was backed up. The bartender was falling behind on drink orders. And through it all, Marco stood at the front podium, greeting guests with the kind of calm that came from 30 years in the restaurant business, seemingly unaware that his staff was barely keeping their heads above water. At 7:55 p.m., Emily delivered a plate of pasta to table 8, assured them that yes, it was definitely the carbonara they'd ordered, and turned to head back to the kitchen. That's when she saw them, 4 men in dark suits entering through the main door. Marco's posture changed instantly, straighter, more attentive. He greeted them with a deference that Emily had never seen him show anyone, not even the minor celebrity who dined there last month. These weren't regular customers. The men moved through the restaurant like they owned the space, and maybe in some way they did. Other diners glanced up, then quickly looked away. The air pressure in the room seemed to change, growing heavier. Sarah appeared at Emily's elbow, her voice low. "That's the 8 p.m. reservation. Mr. Castellano's party." She paused. "Don't stare. Just do your job. Be polite, and stay out of their way unless they call you over." "Who are they?" Emily whispered. Sarah gave her a look that said, "Don't ask questions you don't want answered. People who tip well if you're smart and don't ask questions." The men were led to the private section, disappearing behind the frosted glass partition that separated it from the main dining area. Emily felt her shoulders relax slightly once they were out of sight. She had 6 other tables to worry about. By 8:45 p.m., Emily's body was running on pure adrenaline, and the half a granola bar she'd managed to eat during a 30-second break. Her section was finally starting to turn over. Table 4 had paid and left. Table 7 was on dessert. Table 9's breadstick-throwing toddler had finally been taken home by exhausted parents. She was carrying a tray of dirty dishes toward the kitchen when her foot caught on something. Maybe a chair leg that was sticking out too far. Maybe her own exhaustion betraying her coordination. The tray tilted dangerously. Emily managed to save it from crashing to the ground, but the momentum sent her stumbling backward, right through the entrance to the private section, right into a chair. She sat down hard, the relief of being off her feet for even a second so overwhelming that it took her brain a moment to catch up to what had happened. When it did, her blood went cold. She was sitting at table 12, the reserved table, and there were 4 men staring at her with expressions that ranged from surprise to something much less friendly. I'm so sorry," Emily stammered, starting to stand. "I tripped. I didn't mean to." "Sit down." The voice came from the man directly across from her, and it wasn't a request. Emily's legs, which had been preparing to launch her out of the chair and possibly out of the restaurant entirely, locked in place. She sat. The man who'd spoken was older than the others. Maybe 40, maybe a bit more. It was hard to tell. He had the kind of face that was both handsome and severe, all sharp angles and controlled expression. Dark hair, graying slightly at the temples. Eyes that were an unusual shade of gray like storm clouds over the Atlantic. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Emily's entire wardrobe, and he wore it like armor. This, Emily realized with growing dread, was not Mr. Castellano. This was someone more important. Someone the others at the table deferred to with their body language, the way they'd gone quiet when he spoke. "I really should," Emily tried again. The man held up one hand, a small gesture that somehow commanded absolute attention. Then he did something Emily didn't expect. He pulled out the chair beside him, a chair that hadn't been there before, that one of his associates had been sitting in and had quickly vacated, and positioned it next to where Emily sat. "You look exhausted," the man said. His voice was deep, measured, with the faintest trace of an accent Emily couldn't quite place. "Rough night?" Emily blinked. This was not how she'd expected this to go. She'd expected anger, maybe a complaint to Marco, possibly getting fired. Not conversation. Yes, we're understaffed and it's been..." She stopped herself. Why was she explaining this to him? "I'm so sorry for the interruption, I'll just..." When did you last take a break? The question was so unexpected that Emily answered honestly. I had 30 seconds around 6 to eat half a granola bar. Something flickered across the man's face. It might have been amusement. That explains why you're about to fall over. He gestured to one of the other men at the table. Marco, get her some water, and something to eat. One of the suited men, apparently also named Marco, which was confusing, stood immediately and headed toward the kitchen. Sir, really, I can't, Emily protested. You can't work on an empty stomach, it's inefficient. The man leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made Emily feel like he was reading every thought in her head. What's your name? Emily hesitated. Something about this situation felt surreal, like she'd stumbled into a scene from a movie and forgotten her lines. Emily? She finally said. Emily Parker. Emily Parker. He repeated her name like he was testing how it felt. I'm Vincent. Just Vincent. No last name. Like he didn't need one. The man who'd gone to the kitchen returned with a glass of water and a plate containing what looked like the chicken piccata from tonight's special menu. He set both in front of Emily, then retreated to his position, standing against the wall. Emily stared at the food. I really can't accept this. I should get back to work. Your other tables are covered, Vincent said. I asked. You have 10 minutes before anyone needs you. Eat. It wasn't a suggestion, but it wasn't cruel either. It was stated like a simple fact, like gravity or the rotation of the earth. Emily picked up the fork. She was too tired to argue, and the food smelled incredible. She took a small bite, trying to maintain some dignity while eating in front of 4 strangers who were watching her like she was the evening's entertainment. How long have you worked here? Vincent asked. 2 years, Emily said between bites. The food was helping, warmth and sustenance spreading through her tired body. You like it? It pays the bills. The answer came out more honest than Emily intended. She quickly added, I mean, yes, it's a good restaurant, Marco's fare, but it's not what you want to be doing. It wasn't a question. Emily looked up, meeting those gray eyes. There was something unsettling about how perceptive he was, how he seemed to see past the polite server smile to the exhausted student underneath. No, she admitted. I'm saving money. For school. I had to drop out of NYU and I'm trying to go back. What are you studying? I was studying education. I want to be a teacher. Emily paused. Elementary school. I like working with kids. For the first time, Vincent's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Noble profession, underpaid, underappreciated, but noble. Someone has to do it, Emily said. True. Vincent picked up his own glass, something amber in a crystal tumbler. Definitely not water. Most people in this city are so focused on making money that they forget some things are worth more than a paycheck. Emily wasn't sure how to respond to that, coming from a man who was clearly wealthy beyond anything she could imagine. But there was something in his tone that suggested he meant it. They sat in silence for a moment. Emily finished the chicken, acutely aware of the other men in the room, of the way they stood like sentries, of the weight of whatever power Vincent held that made grown men jump at his smallest gesture. I should really get back, Emily said, setting down her fork. Thank you for the food, and I'm sorry again for interrupting your dinner. You didn't interrupt anything important. Vincent stood when she did, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that surprised her. Emily Parker, who wants to be a teacher. It was interesting to meet you. There was something in the way he said, interesting, that made Emily's heart skip a beat. Not threatening, but significant. Like she'd become something other than just another waitress in a city full of them. It was nice to meet you too, Emily managed, though. Nice felt like an inadequate word for whatever this strange encounter had been. She turned to leave, acutely aware of his eyes on her back as she walked away. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Emily moved through her remaining tables on autopilot, her mind replaying the conversation with Vincent over and over. Who was he? Why had he been so? Kind wasn't the right word. Interested, curious, and why had sitting across from him felt like standing at the edge of something dangerous and vast? By the time the last customer left at 11:30 p.m., Emily was running on fumes. She helped Tom and Jasmine with the closing duties, wiping down tables and restocking the server station, moving through the familiar routine with muscle memory. Did you really sit at table 12? Jasmine whispered as they folded napkins. She was 21. A dancer trying to make it on Broadway, and she loved gossip almost as much as she loved musical theater. I tripped, Emily said. It was an accident. Girl, you're lucky you didn't get thrown out on the street. Do you know who that was? Vincent something, he didn't give a last name. Jasmine's eyes went wide. Vincent Cole. That's Vincent Cole. The name didn't mean anything to Emily. She must have looked blank because Jasmine leaned in closer, her voice dropping even lower. Well, let's just say he's someone very important, very powerful, and very, very dangerous to cross. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean dangerous? I mean, Jasmine glanced around to make sure no one was listening. I mean, he's not just a businessman, Em. He's connected. Like, connected. The kind of person who owns half the city and controls the other half. The kind of person you don't want to notice you. But he had noticed her. He'd pulled up a chair and asked about her life. Emily finished folding the napkin in her hands, trying to process this information. Well, I'm sure I'll never see him again anyway. Probably for the best, Jasmine agreed. Emily left Marchetti's at 12:15 a.m., stepping out into the freezing February night. The temperature had dropped while she was inside, and the wind cut through her coat like it wasn't even there. She pulled it tighter around herself and started the walk to the subway station, her feet screaming in protest with every step. The streets of Tribeca were quieter now, most of the restaurants closed or closing. A few people hurried past, heads down against the cold. A taxi splashed through a puddle of slush. Somewhere a dog barked. Emily was halfway to the subway when she noticed the car. It was parked across the street, a dark sedan with tinted windows. Nothing unusual about that in New York, except Emily had that prickling sensation on the back of her neck, the one that said she was being watched. She picked up her pace. The car didn't move. Probably just paranoia, she told herself. Jasmine's warnings had gotten into her head, that's all. Vincent Cole was just another rich customer. The fact that he'd been kind to her didn't mean anything. The subway station was warm compared to the street above, crowded with late-night travelers and people who worked odd hours. Emily found a seat on the train, grateful to finally be off her feet. She pulled out her phone and checked her bank account again, as if the number might have magically changed in the last few hours. It hadn't. Still 847.23 hours. She opened a new app, one she'd downloaded last week but hadn't used yet. A tutoring platform where she could make extra money helping kids with homework online. If she could get a few clients, work a couple of hours each week in addition to the restaurant. The math was daunting but not impossible. Never impossible. The train rattled through the tunnel and Emily let her head rest against the window, watching the darkness rush past. In the reflection she could see her own tired face, and for just a moment, she allowed herself to remember sitting across from Vincent Cole, the intensity of his attention, the way he'd seemed genuinely interested in her answer about teaching, the elegant economy of his movements, like someone who never wasted energy on unnecessary actions. Very powerful, very dangerous. Emily closed her eyes. Jasmine was right. It was better if she never saw him again. The universe, as it turned out, had other plans. The next day was Saturday, which meant another double shift at Marchetti's. Emily dragged herself out of bed at the same ungodly hour, went through the same routine, took the same crowded subway. When she arrived at the restaurant, Sarah was already there and she had a strange expression on her face. "Emily, we need to talk." Emily's stomach dropped. This was it. Someone had complained about last night. She was getting fired. "I'm so sorry about yesterday," Emily started. "I know I shouldn't have." "You're not in trouble," Sarah interrupted. "But this came for you this morning." She held out an envelope. Heavy cream-colored paper, Emily's name written on it in elegant script. "What is this?" "I don't know. It was delivered by courier at 6 a.m. They specifically asked for you." Emily took the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a card and something else. She pulled out the card first. "For your honesty. And because teachers should be able to pursue their education." There was no signature. Just those two sentences in the same elegant handwriting. Emily reached back into the envelope and pulled out the other item. When she saw what it was, her knees went weak. A check, made out to Emily Parker, for $15,000. The exact amount she needed for tuition. "Oh my God," Emily whispered. "Oh my God." Sarah peered over her shoulder and gasped. "Who? Emily, who is this from?" But Emily knew. She didn't need a signature to know. Vincent Cole. The man she'd sat across from for 10 minutes. The man who'd asked about her dreams. The man who was, according to Jasmine, very powerful and very dangerous. Had just paid for her entire education. "I can't accept this," Emily said, even as her hands shook holding the check. This was everything she'd been working toward. 2 years of double shifts and sore feet and eating granola bars for dinner. All of it, right here in her hands. Are you insane? Sarah's eyes were huge. Emily, that's $15,000. I know, but I didn't earn it. I don't even know him. I can't just... Miss Parker? Both women turned. Marco was standing at the entrance to the dining room, and he wasn't alone. Vincent Cole stood beside him, wearing a different suit but the same expression of calm control. In the morning light streaming through the restaurant windows, he looked less like the mystery from last night, and more like what he was. A man who commanded rooms just by entering them. Mr. Cole requested a table for breakfast, Marco said, his tone making it clear this was not a request Emily could decline. Your section. Emily's heart was pounding. She looked down at the check in her hands, then back up at Vincent. He met her gaze steadily, those gray eyes revealing nothing. I'll be right there, Emily managed to say. Marco nodded and headed back to the kitchen. Vincent didn't move. You have questions, he said. It wasn't a question. I have about 1,000 questions, Emily replied, finding her voice. Starting with, why? Because you worked a 12-hour shift on your feet with barely a break. Because you apologized for something that wasn't your fault. Because when I asked what you were studying, you didn't make something up to impress me. You told me the truth. Vincent paused. And because I can afford it. And you can't. I can't accept this. You can. You will. He said it with the same matter-of-fact tone he'd used last night. Consider it an investment. The city needs good teachers. I'm simply ensuring we get one. This isn't... People don't just do things like this. I do. Vincent turned toward the dining room. I believe I have a table waiting, unless you plan to turn away a customer. Emily stood there, clutching the check, her mind racing. Every instinct told her this was wrong, that accepting money from a stranger, from someone Jasmine had called dangerous, was a terrible idea. But the check in her hands represented freedom. It represented going back to school, pursuing her dreams, not having to work herself into exhaustion just to tread water. It represented everything she'd been fighting for. Table 7, Emily finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll bring you a menu. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes might have been satisfaction. As Emily walked toward his table, the check still clutched in her hand. She had the distinct feeling that she'd just crossed a line she didn't entirely understand, and that there was no going back. Emily deposited the check on Monday morning. She'd spent the entire weekend staring at it, holding it up to the light like she could somehow verify its reality through sheer examination. $15,000, written in elegant script, signed by someone named Victoria Chen, financial manager, on behalf of V. Cole Enterprises. The bank teller had processed it without comment, though her eyebrows had risen slightly at the amount. Emily had watched the numbers in her account change, from $847.23 to $15,847.23, with a feeling that was equal parts relief and unease. She should have felt purely happy. This was her dream coming true. But instead, she felt like she'd accepted something she didn't fully understand, entered into an agreement whose terms she hadn't read. On Tuesday, Vincent Cole came back to Marchetti's. Emily saw him arrive at 7:30, the same calm, commanding presence that seemed to alter the atmosphere of the room. Marco greeted him with the same deference, led him to a table in Emily's section, table 7, the same one as Saturday, and Vincent settled in like this was his regular routine. Emily approached with a menu and water, her heart beating faster than it should. Good evening, Mr. Cole, she said, keeping her voice professional. Can I start you with something to drink? Vincent, he corrected, looking up from his phone. And sparkling water is fine. Thank you for asking, Emily. The way he said her name, like they were already familiar, already past the formalities, made something flutter in her chest. I deposited the check, she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. I wanted to thank you. I don't even have words for what it means. Then don't worry about words, just use it well. Vincent's expression was unreadable. Are you going back to NYU? If they'll take me back, I have to reapply, but my advisor said my chances are good. Emily paused. Can I ask why you did it? I already told you why. No, I mean, really why? People don't just give away that kind of money to strangers. Vincent considered her for a moment, those gray eyes thoughtful. Let's say I recognize potential when I see it, and I believe in investing in things that matter. I'm not an investment, I'm a person. The best investments always are. He said it without irony. Now I believe I'd like to order dinner. What do you recommend? It was a clear dismissal of the topic, but not unkind. Emily took his order, the sea bass with roasted vegetables, and retreated to the kitchen, her mind spinning. Over the next 2 weeks, Vincent became a regular. Not every night, but often enough that Emily started to anticipate his arrivals. Tuesday and Thursday evenings usually, sometimes Saturday. He always sat in her section, always ordered thoughtfully, always left a generous tip, though never anything as dramatic as the first check, and slowly, carefully, they began to talk. It started with small things. Vincent would ask about her day, and Emily would answer honestly. About the difficult customer who'd complained that his water wasn't cold enough, about the new hire who couldn't remember which side to serve from, about the cooking class she was taking online to improve her resume. In return, Vincent offered pieces of himself, small pieces, carefully chosen but real nonetheless. He'd grown up in Brooklyn, not far from where Emily lived now. His father had been a construction worker, his mother a seamstress. He'd put himself through college working nights at a warehouse. He didn't mention what he did now, and Emily didn't ask, though she'd started to piece it together from context clues and the occasional overheard conversation. "You don't talk much about your work," Emily observed one Thursday evening in late February. The restaurant was quieter than usual, a rare lull that allowed for longer conversations. "Would you want to hear about it?" Vincent asked, cutting into his steak with precise movements. "I'm curious about what takes up most of your time." "I manage investments, property mostly, some business ventures." He said it casually, but Emily noticed he was watching her reaction. It's not particularly interesting conversation. Emily had gone home after that shift and done what she'd been avoiding for weeks. She'd searched his name online. What she found made her stomach tighten. Vincent Cole wasn't just a businessman. He was the businessman in certain circles. Property developer, yes, but also connected to a network of enterprises that occupied the gray areas of legality. The articles were careful, never stating anything outright, but the implications were clear. There were photos. Vincent at charity galas, always in impeccable suits. Vincent cutting ribbons at new building openings. Vincent leaving courthouses after testifying in cases that had been mysteriously dismissed. And there were older articles, from 15 years ago, about a different Vincent Cole, one who'd been questioned in connection with activities that the articles described with phrases like alleged organized crime connections and suspected involvement. Nothing proven, nothing charged, but the smoke was thick enough to suggest fire. Emily had closed her laptop feeling like she'd opened a door she couldn't close. The man who asked about her day, who remembered that she preferred tea over coffee, who'd paid for her education, that man existed in a world she'd only seen in movies. She should have been scared. Maybe she was. But she was also, despite everything, still curious. "You've been quiet tonight." It was a Tuesday in early March, and spring was beginning to assert itself against winter's grip. The temperatures had climbed above freezing, and the piles of gray snow were finally melting into the gutters. Emily looked up from where she'd been refilling Vincent's water glass. "Sorry. Long day." "That's not it." Vincent set down his fork. "Something's bothering you." The restaurant hummed around them. The clink of silverware, the murmur of conversations, someone's laughter from across the room. Emily glanced toward the kitchen, making sure no one needed her, then made a decision. "I looked you up," she said quietly. "Online." Vincent's expression didn't change. And I found, articles, things about your business. About," she struggled for the right words, "about activities that might not be entirely legal." "Might not be," Vincent repeated. "That's careful phrasing. I'm trying to understand who you are, who I've been talking to." "Fair enough." Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What do you want to know? Are the things they suggest true?" "Some of them. Not all of them. The truth is usually more complicated than what fits in a news article." He paused. "Does it change anything? Knowing what you think you know?" Emily considered this. The honest answer was complicated. "I don't know," she finally said. "Part of me thinks I should be more careful, that I shouldn't trust someone who operates in gray areas. And the other part? The other part thinks you've been nothing but kind to me, that you paid for my education without asking for anything in return, that you remember I like tea and you ask about my day like you actually care about the answer." "I do care about the answer," Vincent said quietly. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning that went beyond casual customer-server politeness. "Why?" Emily asked. Why do you care about the random waitress who accidentally sat at your table? Because you're not random. Because in a city full of people who want something from me, you just wanted to go back to your other tables. Vincent's gaze was intense, holding hers. Because you apologized for being tired. Because you're honest. That's rare, Emily. Rarer than you know. Emily felt her breath catch. This was dangerous territory. Not because Vincent was dangerous, though he might be, but because she could feel herself being pulled in, drawn to this complicated, controlled man who seemed to see her as more than just another person serving him dinner. I should get back to work, she said, but she didn't move. You should, Vincent agreed, but his slight smile suggested he knew she wouldn't. Not yet. Can I ask you something? Emily said. Always. If I hadn't sat at your table that night, would you have noticed me at all? Vincent considered the question seriously. Probably not, he admitted. I don't usually pay attention to servers. No offense. None taken, it's honest. But you did sit down, and I did notice, and now, he trailed off. Now what? Now I find myself coming here more often than I probably should, making excuses to occupy table 7, timing my arrivals for when you're working. Vincent's candor was almost startling. So to answer your question, no, I probably wouldn't have noticed you, but I'm glad I did. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks. This was definitely crossing lines. The professional boundary between server and customer. The practical boundary between her simple life and his complicated one. I'm glad too, she heard herself say, even if I'm not sure it's smart. The best things rarely are. The following Thursday, Vincent didn't come to the restaurant. Emily told herself it didn't matter, that she wasn't disappointed, that his absence didn't affect her at all. She was lying, and she knew it. But Friday brought something unexpected. Emily was restocking the coffee station during a slow afternoon when Marco approached her, looking slightly uncomfortable. Emily, there's someone here to see you, says it's personal. Her heart jumped. Vincent? No, a woman. She's waiting in the break room. Confused, Emily followed Marco to the small staff area at the back of the restaurant. Sitting in one of the folding chairs was an elegant woman in her 50s, wearing a designer coat and an expression of polite curiosity. Miss Parker? I'm Victoria Chen. I work for Mr. Cole. The name from the check signature. Emily's guard went up immediately. Is something wrong? Not at all. Mr. Cole asked me to deliver this to you personally. Victoria held out an envelope. Different from the last one, smaller, cream-colored stationery. Emily took it hesitantly. What is this? An invitation. Mr. Cole requests the pleasure of your company for dinner tomorrow evening. 7 o'clock. The address is inside, along with his personal number should you need to reach him. He wants to take me to dinner? Outside the restaurant? That is the general idea of an invitation, yes. Victoria's expression softened slightly. He was quite specific that this is entirely your choice. No pressure, no expectations. Simply an invitation from someone who enjoys your company. Emily opened the envelope. Inside was a card with an address in the Upper East Side, a restaurant she'd heard of but could never afford, and a phone number written in Vincent's handwriting. I'm not sure this is a good idea, Emily said. Perhaps not. But when was the last time you did something just because you wanted to, without worrying about whether it was sensible? Victoria stood, smoothing her coat. Think about it. If you decide to come, the reservation is under his name. If you don't, no harm done. She left before Emily could formulate a response. Emily stared at the card for a long moment, her thumb tracing the embossed letters of the restaurant's name. This was different from their conversations at Marchetti's. This was deliberate. This was Vincent making it clear that his interest in her went beyond casual conversation while he ate dinner. This was a line, and if she crossed it, there would be no pretending it was accidental. Emily called her best friend Lisa that night. They'd been roommates at NYU before Emily had to drop out, and Lisa was one of the few people who knew the full story of Emily's struggles. She was studying law now, working toward the kind of success Emily had once imagined for herself. Let me get this straight, Lisa said over the phone. The guy who gave you $15,000 wants to take you to dinner at Oriole, and you're not sure if you should go? It's more complicated than that. Is he married? No. Significantly older in a creepy way. He's 40. That's 15 years older, but it's not creepy. Has he been inappropriate with you at all? Emily thought about their conversations, the way Vincent always maintained a respectful distance, how he'd never once made her uncomfortable. No, never. Then what's the problem? The problem is he's not just some businessman, Lisa, he's connected. I looked him up. There are articles about investigations, about connections to organized crime. Articles that say what exactly? That he's been charged with something? Well, no, but nothing. Look, Em, I'm not saying you should marry the guy. I'm saying maybe you should have dinner with someone who's been kind to you, who clearly respects you, and who can afford to take you somewhere nice for once. When was the last time someone treated you to anything? Emily couldn't remember. Her life had been work and more work for so long that the idea of someone else paying, someone else planning, someone else caring about her comfort felt foreign. It feels like I'm crossing a line, Emily said quietly. Maybe you are. But not all lines are bad to cross, Em. Sometimes they lead to good things. After they hung up, Emily sat in her small apartment, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. The lights of Manhattan glittered in the distance, a city full of possibilities and dangers in equal measure. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to the number Vincent had provided. Thank you for the invitation. I'd like to accept. Emily. The response came within minutes. I'm glad. A car will pick you up at 6:30. Dress comfortably. V. Emily looked at her closet, full of work clothes and thrift store finds, and realized she had absolutely nothing appropriate to wear to a restaurant like Oriole. She had 24 hours to figure it out. The dress came from a consignment shop in Park Slope, a simple black number that had probably cost someone a fortune originally, but was within Emily's budget secondhand. It fit well enough, elegant without being ostentatious. She paired it with her only nice shoes, black heels she'd bought for a cousin's wedding 2 years ago, and hoped she didn't look as nervous as she felt. The car that arrived at 6:30 was not what Emily expected. She'd imagined maybe a nice sedan. What pulled up was a sleek black town car with a professional driver who opened the door for her and asked if she needed anything for the ride. I'm fine, thank you. Emily managed, sliding into the leather interior and feeling completely out of her depth. The drive from Brooklyn to the Upper East Side took 40 minutes in Saturday evening traffic. Emily watched the city scroll past the tinted windows, each neighborhood a different world. By the time they pulled up in front of Oriole, her hands were shaking slightly. Vincent was waiting outside. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie, the top button of his shirt undone, the most casual Emily had ever seen him, and somehow it made him even more attractive. When he saw her step out of the car, something shifted in his expression. Appreciation, maybe, or something deeper. Emily, you look beautiful. Thank you. You didn't have to send a car. I wanted to. Shall we? He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, Emily took it. The restaurant was everything she'd imagined and more. Soft lighting, impeccable service, an atmosphere of hushed elegance that made Emily acutely aware of every move she made. But Vincent guided her through it all with easy confidence, his hand light on her back as they were led to a corner table with a view of the street below. This is incredible, Emily said once they were seated. I've never been anywhere like this. Good. I wanted to show you something new. Vincent's attention was focused entirely on her, making her feel like the only person in the room. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either, honestly. What changed your mind? Emily considered the question. Curiosity, maybe. Or, I don't know. You've been kind to me and I wanted to understand why. Who you are when you're not sitting at table 7. Fair enough. What would you like to know? Over appetizers, scallops so perfectly prepared they melted on Emily's tongue, she asked him about his work. Really asked this time. Vincent answered carefully but honestly, explaining his property development business, the buildings he owned across the city, the investments he managed. And the other things? Emily asked. The gray areas. I won't lie to you, Emily. My business interests extend into areas that aren't always completely legal. I own establishments that some people would consider morally questionable. I have connections to people that law enforcement would prefer I didn't. He paused. But I don't harm innocent people. I have rules. Lines I won't cross. What kind of lines? I don't deal in anything that exploits the vulnerable. No substances that destroy lives. No operations that prey on desperation. I'm not claiming to be a good man, but I have standards. Emily absorbed this. It wasn't reassuring exactly, but it was honest. And there was something about Vincent's directness that she appreciated, even if the content of his honesty was troubling. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because if you're going to know me, really know me, you deserve the truth. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. The main course arrived. For Emily, a perfectly cooked fillet. For Vincent, lamb chops with a mint reduction. They ate in comfortable silence for a few moments before Vincent spoke again. "Tell me about your family." It was Emily's turn to be honest. She told him about her father, who'd been a postal worker before the heart attack that killed him 3 years ago. About her mother, who worked 2 jobs trying to keep their house in New Jersey. About the medical bills that had consumed Emily's college fund and forced her to drop out. "That's why teaching matters so much to you," Vincent observed. "Because you know what it's like to have limited options. I want to help kids who might not have anyone else believing in them. Kids like I was. You still are a kid in many ways. 25 is very young. I don't feel young. I know. That's what happens when life forces you to grow up faster than you should." Vincent's expression was understanding. "But you shouldn't have to carry everything alone, Emily. It's okay to let someone help sometimes." "Is that what you're doing? Helping?" "I'm trying to, if you'll let me." After dinner, Vincent suggested a walk. The March evening was cool but not unbearably cold, and the city streets were alive with Saturday night energy. They walked through Central Park, the paths lit by antique-style lamps, other couples and groups passing them in both directions. Then it started to rain. Not a downpour, just a gentle spring rain that turned the lamplight into halos and made the pavement gleam. Emily laughed, tilting her face up to feel the drops, and when she looked back at Vincent, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "We should find cover," she said, "or we could keep walking." So they did. Vincent offered her his jacket, which Emily accepted, breathing in the scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely him. They walked through the rain, talking about everything and nothing. Her favorite books, his opinions on the best pizza in Brooklyn, whether the Yankees or Mets were the superior team. "I can't believe you're a Mets fan," Emily teased. "That's the most disappointing thing I've learned about you all night." "More disappointing than the quasi-legal business ventures?" "Way more disappointing." Vincent laughed, really laughed, and the sound was so unexpected and genuine that Emily felt something shift in her chest. This man, who commanded rooms and built empires and operated in moral gray areas, was laughing at her baseball joke. By the time they made it back to where the car was waiting, they were both damp and Emily's hair had come loose from its careful styling, curling in the humidity. She probably looked a mess, but Vincent was still looking at her like she was the most interesting thing he'd seen in years. "Thank you for tonight," Emily said as they stood beside the car. "For dinner, for the walk, for all of it. Thank you for saying yes." Vincent hesitated, then added, "Can I see you again? Not at the restaurant. Like this." Emily knew she should say no, knew that getting closer to Vincent Cole was probably a mistake, possibly dangerous, definitely complicated. "Yes," she said anyway. "I'd like that." Vincent smiled. Not the controlled smile she'd seen before, but something warmer, more open. "Good. I'll call you." The ride back to Brooklyn felt shorter than the ride there, Emily's mind replaying the evening over and over. The conversation, the rain, the way Vincent had looked at her like she mattered. She was in trouble. Deep trouble. Over the next 3 weeks, Emily saw Vincent outside the restaurant 4 more times. Coffee on a Wednesday afternoon in a quiet cafe in the West Village. A matinee showing of an old movie at an independent theater. A Sunday morning walk through the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. Each time, their conversations grew longer, more personal, the distance between them shrinking incrementally. But there were warning signs too. Emily started noticing things. A car that seemed to follow her from the subway to her apartment 2 nights in a row. A man in a dark coat who appeared in 3 different places she visited in 1 week. Could be coincidence, but something about it felt wrong. Then there were the looks from co-workers. Sarah pulled her aside one day with concern written all over her face. "Em, I need to talk to you about Vincent Cole." "What about him?" "People are noticing. The way he requests your section. The way you two talk. And I've heard things, Em. He's not someone to get involved with." "We're just friends," Emily protested weakly. "Are you? Because it doesn't look like just friends from where I'm standing." Sarah's expression was serious. "I care about you, okay? And I don't want to see you get hurt. Men like Vincent Cole, they're dangerous. Not just because of what they do, but because of the world they live in, the people around them." Emily wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because Sarah was right. She'd seen enough news articles, heard enough whispered warnings, noticed enough strange occurrences to know that Vincent's world was nothing like hers. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were different things. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in late March. Emily was closing her apartment door after getting home from an afternoon shift when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stay away from Vincent Cole. This is your only warning. Her blood went cold. She stared at the message, then at her door, suddenly very aware of how alone she was. Another text came through. We're watching you. Emily's hands shook as she locked the deadbolt, checked the windows, pulled the curtains closed. She called Vincent immediately. He answered on the first ring. Emily, what's wrong? I'm getting messages. Threatening messages. They know about you, about us. Her voice was tight with fear. There was a pause, and when Vincent spoke again, his voice had changed, harder, colder. Send me the screenshots. Don't leave your apartment. I'm sending someone to you now. Vincent, what's happening? Someone found out about you, about us. I'll explain everything, but right now I need you to stay inside and stay safe. Can you do that? Emily looked around her small apartment, at the locks that suddenly seemed flimsy, at the windows that suddenly seemed vulnerable. Yes, she whispered. I can do that. Good. Marcus will be there in 20 minutes. He's one of my security team. Let him in when he knocks. He'll identify himself properly. I'm coming as soon as I can. The line went dead. Emily sat on her couch, hugging her knees to her chest, watching the clock tick away the minutes. Outside, she heard a car door slam, footsteps in the hallway. This was real. The danger wasn't abstract anymore, wasn't something she could rationalize away or pretend didn't exist. This was Vincent's world reaching out to touch her, and she had no idea if she was ready for what came next. Marcus arrived exactly 20 minutes later, just as Vincent had promised. He was a tall man in his mid-30s, broad-shouldered and professional, wearing a dark jacket that didn't quite conceal the communication device in his ear. When he knocked, he announced himself clearly. Miss Parker, my name is Marcus Webb. Mr. Cole sent me. I'm going to show my identification under the door. Emily watched as a business card slid across her floor. It had Vincent's company logo and Marcus's photo, along with a security clearance number. She'd become the kind of person who needed armed security outside her Brooklyn apartment, and the reality of that made her stomach turn. She opened the door. Miss Parker. Marcus's voice was calm, reassuring. I'm going to position myself in the hallway. Mr. Cole is approximately 15 minutes away. You're safe now. What's happening? Who sent those messages? Mr. Cole will explain everything. For now, I need you to stay inside and away from the windows. Can you do that for me? Emily nodded, retreating back into her apartment. She sat on the couch, phone clutched in her hand, listening to Marcus's presence in the hallway, a barrier between her and whatever threat existed beyond her door. 13 minutes later, she heard Vincent's voice. When she opened the door, he was there, and the carefully controlled man she knew looked different. His jaw was tight, his eyes sharp with something that looked like barely contained anger. But when he saw her, his expression softened. Are you all right? I'm scared, Emily admitted. Vincent, what's going on? He stepped inside, Marcus closing the door behind them and taking up position just outside. Vincent's gaze swept her apartment, taking in the modest furnishings, the textbooks stacked on the small desk, the window that looked out onto the fire escape. This isn't secure, he said quietly. We need to move you somewhere safer. This is my home. I know, and I'm sorry, but someone found out about you, Emily, about us, and they're using you to get to me. Emily's legs felt weak. She sat down heavily on the couch. Who? Why? Vincent sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance even now. I have competitors, people who would like to see me weakened or removed from certain business operations. You've been seen with me. They've connected the dots. So this is because of you. Because I said yes to coffee, to dinner, to all of it. Yes. Vincent didn't flinch from the accusation. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. I should have kept you at a distance. Then why didn't you? The question hung between them. Vincent looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, Emily saw something unguarded in his expression. Because I didn't want to, he said simply. Because for the first time in longer than I can remember, I met someone who didn't want anything from me, who talked to me like I was just a person, who made me feel. He stopped, searching for words. Normal, human. Emily's anger warred with understanding. She wanted to blame him, to push him away, to go back to her simple life before Vincent Cole had pulled up that second chair. But she couldn't deny her own role in this. She'd said yes. She'd kept saying yes, even when the warning signs were clear. What happens now? She asked. Now I give you a choice. The real choice I should have given you from the beginning. Vincent's voice was steady, but his eyes were intense. You can walk away. I'll make sure you're protected. New apartment with proper security, enough money to finish school without working, complete separation from me. You'll be safe, and you'll never have to see me again. Or you stay. You accept that being close to me comes with risks. I can minimize them, protect you as much as possible, but I can't eliminate them entirely. Not in my world. Emily stood, needing to move, to think. She walked to the window, looking out at the street below. A black SUV was parked at the curb, more of Vincent's security, no doubt. I don't want to live in fear, she said. I don't want to need armed guards just to go to work. I know, but I also... Emily turned to face him. I can't pretend the last month didn't happen, that I don't care about you. Vincent stood, crossing to her slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted. She didn't. I care about you too, he said quietly. More than is probably wise. More than I intended to. Then help me understand. Make me understand why this is worth it. Why your world, with all its dangers and moral ambiguities, is something I should choose to be part of. I can't make that argument, Emily, because honestly, you shouldn't choose it. You should take the out I'm offering and build the life you deserve, teaching, simple, safe. That would be the smart choice. But I'm selfish enough to hope you won't make the smart choice. That you'll choose this, choose us, despite the risks. Emily's heart hammered in her chest. Everything rational told her to walk away, but standing here, looking at Vincent's unguarded expression, feeling the weight of his honesty, she found herself unable to do it. I need time, she finally said. Time to think, to process all of this. And I need complete honesty from you. No more surprises. No more discovering things after the fact. If I'm going to make this choice, I need to know what I'm choosing. Fair enough. Ask me anything. Have you ever hurt anyone? Physically? Vincent didn't hesitate. Yes, in self-defense, and once to protect someone who couldn't protect themselves. I won't pretend I'm non-violent, but I'm not cruel. I don't enjoy causing pain. Are you involved in anything that actively harms innocent people? Not to my knowledge, but my business associates don't always share my standards. I can't control everyone I work with. If I choose to stay, what does that look like? Do I get security following me everywhere? Do I have to quit my job? Change my life completely? You get security when necessary. You keep your job if you want it, though I'd prefer you didn't work yourself to exhaustion anymore. You live your life but with awareness of potential risks. And... Vincent paused. And you'd have me, for whatever that's worth. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. This was insane. A month ago, she'd been worried about making rent. Now she was deciding whether to enter into a relationship with a man whose world included threats, security details, and moral compromise. I'll stay, she heard herself say, but on my terms. I'm not going to be helpless or ignorant. If I'm in this world, I need to understand it. And I need to keep being myself, keep working. Keep pursuing teaching. Keep my independence. Can you accept that? Vincent's relief was visible. Yes. On your terms. Always. The next 3 weeks were an education in Vincent's reality. Emily learned that the black SUV was now a permanent fixture outside her apartment, that Marcus or someone like him would be nearby whenever she left her building, that her phone now had additional security features installed by Vincent's tech team. She learned that Vincent owned half of Tribeca, and significant portions of 3 other neighborhoods, that his business associates included everyone from legitimate real estate developers to people whose names appeared in federal investigations, and she learned that the threats against her were real. Her apartment was broken into on a Tuesday afternoon while she was at work. Nothing was taken, but her belongings had been disturbed. Drawers opened, closets searched. It was a message. We can reach you whenever we want. Vincent's response was immediate. By that evening, Emily had been moved to a different apartment in a secured building, one with a doorman, cameras, and residents who asked no questions. It was nicer than anywhere she'd ever lived, and she hated that she needed it. This is temporary, Vincent assured her as she unpacked in the new space. Once we identify who's behind the threats and neutralize them, you can go back to your normal life, or as normal as possible. Who are they? The people threatening me? Vincent's expression darkened. A man named Dmitry Volkov, Russian based in Brighton Beach. We've been competing for control of certain shipping operations. He's trying to leverage you to force me out. Shipping operations, Emily repeated. Is that code for something? Sometimes, not always. The shipping itself is legal. What's being shipped isn't always. The honesty should have shocked her, but Emily was past shock. She was in survival mode now. trying to navigate a world whose rules she was learning on the fly. The confrontation came on a Friday night. Emily had insisted on still working at Marchetti's, despite Vincent's concerns. It was important to her to maintain some normalcy, to not let fear completely reshape her life. Marcus accompanied her to work and waited discreetly nearby, but inside the restaurant, Emily could almost pretend things were normal. Almost. She was carrying a tray of dishes to the kitchen when she noticed them, 2 men at table 9 who hadn't been there a moment ago. They weren't dressed for Marchetti's, their suits cheaper, their demeanor harder, and they were watching her. Emily's stomach tightened. She caught Marcus's eye through the window. He was already moving. One of the men stood, intercepting her path. "Emily Parker, we need to talk." "I don't think so." Emily tried to step around him, but the second man had moved to block her other side. "Mr. Volkov wants to meet with you. Just a conversation. You come with us now, quietly, and nobody gets hurt." The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were staring. Sarah was reaching for the phone to call the police, and Emily could see Marcus entering through the front door, his hand inside his jacket. "I'm not going anywhere with you," Emily said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. That wasn't a request. The first man reached for her arm, and that's when everything happened at once. Marcus was there, moving faster than a man his size should be able to move. His hand caught the man's wrist, twisting it in a way that made the man gasp. The second man reached for something in his jacket, but 3 more of Vincent's security team materialized from positions Emily hadn't even known they occupied. The standoff lasted only seconds. The 2 men, outmanned and outmaneuvered, raised their hands slowly. "Tell Volkov," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a threat Emily had never heard in it before, "that he made a mistake. Tell him Vincent Cole doesn't negotiate through threats. And tell him if he comes near Miss Parker again, there won't be a third warning." The men were escorted out. Police arrived minutes later, took statements, promised increased patrols. The other diners gradually returned to their meals, the excitement becoming tomorrow's story. Emily stood in the kitchen, hands shaking, while Sarah brought her water. "Em, you can't keep working here. Not if this is your life now. I can't let them control me. I can't let fear win. This isn't about fear winning. This is about being smart. Those men were going to take you, Emily. Right here in front of everyone. What happens next time when they're smarter about it?" Emily knew Sarah was right, but admitting it meant admitting that her life had fundamentally changed, that there was no going back to the simple existence she'd had before Vincent Cole. Her phone buzzed. "Vincent, Marcus told me what happened. I'm coming to you. I'm okay," Emily typed back. "But we need to talk." "Yes, we do." They met at Vincent's penthouse in Manhattan, a space Emily had never seen before. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park. Art that probably cost more than Emily would make in a lifetime hung on the walls. Everything was elegant, controlled, expensive, just like Vincent himself. He was waiting when she arrived, still in his business suit but with his jacket off, sleeves rolled up. He looked tired in a way Emily had never seen, the weight of everything visible in the lines around his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "This is exactly what I wanted to prevent." "You can't prevent it." "Not completely. You said that yourself." Emily set down her bag, looking out at the glittering city below. "But I can't live like this, Vincent. I can't have armed confrontations in my workplace. I can't be a target. I know. I've been handling this wrong, trying to manage Volkov diplomatically. That ends now." There was something in his tone that made Emily turn to look at him. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done from the beginning. Remove him from the equation." "Remove him how?" Vincent met her gaze steadily. "However necessary. He threatened you, Emily. He sent men to take you. There are lines you don't cross in my world, and he crossed them." Emily felt cold. This was the reality of Vincent's world. Not abstract discussions of moral ambiguity, but concrete consequences delivered with controlled violence. "I don't want you to do anything that would," she struggled for the right words, "that would make you into something you're not. I won't become a monster to protect you, but I will do what's necessary." Can you accept that? Could she? Emily looked at this man who'd shown her kindness, who'd paid for her education, who'd been honest even when honesty revealed uncomfortable truths. Could she accept that he would use methods she'd never choose, operate in ways she didn't fully understand to keep her safe? "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I know I can't ask you to just let this continue. Something has to change. Then let me handle it, my way, and trust that I'll do what's right." even if it doesn't look like what you'd consider right. Emily walked to where Vincent stood, looking up at him. I'm scared. Of what might happen. Of what you might have to do. Of what I'm becoming by being part of this. What are you becoming? Someone who accepts that violence might be necessary. Someone who needs security guards and safe houses. Someone who's complicit in a world I used to think I'd never touch. Vincent's hand came up to cup her face gently. You're becoming someone who understands that the world isn't black and white. That survival sometimes requires compromise. That caring about someone means accepting all of who they are, not just the comfortable parts. Is that what you're doing? Accepting all of me? Yes. Your idealism, your stubbornness, your insistence on independence even when it makes my security team want to tear their hair out. All of it. Despite everything, Emily smiled. Your security team hates me, don't they? They respect you, which is harder to earn. Emily leaned into Vincent's touch, allowing herself this moment of vulnerability. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new moral calculations. But tonight, in this moment, she chose to be here. Chose him. Chose this complicated, dangerous, impossible situation. Handle it, she said quietly. Do what you need to do, but promise me you'll come back. That whatever you do to end this threat, it won't cost you something you can't afford to lose. I promise. Vincent pulled her close, and Emily let herself be held, breathing in his scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart. She was making a choice she couldn't take back, accepting a world she didn't fully understand, but she was making it with her eyes open, and that had to count for something. 3 days later, Dmitry Volkov left New York. The details were never shared with Emily, but she read between the lines of what Vincent did tell her. Negotiations that involved significant financial incentives, territorial concessions, and the kind of leverage that made continuing the conflict more costly than backing down. No violence, Vincent assured her, just business. Emily wanted to believe him, chose to believe him. Her life slowly returned to a new kind of normal. She kept working at Marchetti's, though with security that was discreet but ever-present. She started taking classes online, working toward readmission to NYU. She saw Vincent regularly, their relationship deepening beyond the initial attraction into something more substantial. But the scars remained. The awareness that safety was conditional, that threats could emerge from shadows, that loving Vincent Cole meant living in a world where normal rules didn't always apply. 6 months after that first accidental meeting, Emily sat in Vincent's penthouse working on an essay for her educational psychology class. Vincent was across the room, reviewing contracts, reading glasses perched on his nose in a way that made him look more professorial than dangerous. It was domestic, normal, almost peaceful. I've been thinking, Emily said, looking up from her laptop. Dangerous activity, Vincent replied without looking up from his papers. I'm serious. I've been thinking about us, about what this is, what it's becoming. Now Vincent did look up, setting aside his work. And what conclusion have you reached? That I'm in this, really in this, not just testing the waters or seeing what happens. I choose you, Vincent. All of you. The parts I understand and the parts I'm still learning about. The simple moments and the complicated ones. Vincent's expression softened in that way it only did with her. Even knowing what you know, what my world requires, because I know, because you've been honest, because you've never asked me to be anything other than myself. Emily closed her laptop. I'm not saying it's easy, or that I don't still have moments of doubt, but I'm choosing this relationship, this life, this version of myself that can exist in your world without losing who I am. That's all I've ever wanted. For you to choose freely, with full knowledge of what you're choosing, then consider it chosen. Vincent crossed to where she sat, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. And Emily, who'd started this journey as a tired waitress who'd accidentally sat at the wrong table, recognized that she'd found exactly what she hadn't known she was looking for. Not perfection, not safety, not simplicity, but something real, something worth the risk, something that had transformed them both. And that was enough. The call came at 3 a.m. Emily woke to Vincent's phone vibrating insistently on the nightstand. He answered immediately, his voice sharp and alert despite the hour. When? A pause. I'm on my way. He was out of bed before Emily could fully process what was happening. Vincent, there's a situation. I need to handle it personally. He was already dressing, moving with practiced efficiency. Stay here. Marcus is outside. What kind of situation? Vincent stopped, turning to face her. In the dim light from the window, his expression was serious. The kind that requires me to make a choice between a business deal that would secure my position for the next decade or protecting someone who needs help. Emily sat up, fully awake now. Who needs help? A family. Good people who got caught in the crossfire of someone else's conflict. I can either attend the meeting that finalizes my expansion into the waterfront properties, or I can pull resources to get them somewhere safe. I can't do both. Then there's no choice. You help them. It's not that simple, Emily. This deal represents years of work. Walking away means losing ground to competitors, potentially destabilizing everything I've built. Emily looked at the man she'd chosen, the man who existed in shades of gray rather than black and white. What does your gut tell you to do? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. My gut says some things matter more than business, that you've changed my priorities, that the man I'm becoming because of you wouldn't sacrifice innocent people for profit. Then trust that instinct. He crossed back to the bed, kissing her forehead. Wait for me. We'll talk when I get back. Emily waited through the gray dawn, watching the sun rise over Manhattan. She'd learned that Vincent's world operated on different timelines, different stakes, but she'd also learned that he was capable of choosing differently than his reputation suggested. He returned at noon, looking exhausted but satisfied. They're safe, the family. Got them on a plane to relatives in California with enough money to start over. Vincent sat beside her on the couch. And I lost the waterfront deal. My competitors moved fast once I didn't show. Do you regret it? No. For the first time in my career, I chose people over power. That's because of you, Emily. You've made me want to be better than I was. Emily walked across the NYU campus, backpack slung over one shoulder, heading to her afternoon seminar. She was officially readmitted, her tuition covered by the scholarship she'd earned, and yes, some help from Vincent, though she insisted on treating part of it as a loan. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. Dinner at home tonight? I'm cooking. She smiled. Home was now the penthouse they shared, a compromise between his world and hers. She kept her independence, her goals, her identity, but she'd also accepted that loving Vincent meant accepting security measures, occasional disruptions, and a life more complex than she'd once imagined. The threats had diminished after Vincent made strategic changes to his business operations, gradually distancing himself from the most questionable enterprises, not because he'd suddenly become a saint, but because Emily had given him something worth protecting more than profit. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Vincent still operated in moral gray areas. Emily still struggled with some aspects of his world. They still had arguments about boundaries, about safety, about the future, but they had something real, something built on honesty and choice and mutual respect. Emily typed back, I'll bring dessert. Love you. The response was immediate. Love you too. She'd sat at the wrong table and changed everything, not just for herself, but for the complicated, controlled man who'd pulled up a second chair and decided she was worth the risk of letting someone in. Some mistakes, Emily had learned, were the best kind to make.